Hey everyone, it's Ivan with KitBadger.com, here to bring you another gear review. Today, talking knives, this guy right here, which is the AMTAC Blades Northman. The Northman was designed by Bill Rapier of AMTAC Shooting. He retired out of the team, spent the lion's share of his time over at Dev Group, and this is his knife, basically the culmination of design, working towards something with absolute defensive capability coupled with utility. I was first introduced to this knife, as well as Bill Rapier, when I attended Surefire's Battle of the Bills. Amazing event put on with both Bill Blowers and Bill Rapier. And Bill Rapier ended up teaching kind of the closer in combatives portion of that evolution in that class. In it, I was introduced to this. And he, as far as philosophy, really big on the idea of strong hand and other strong hand. And so the idea of creating a weapon that can be used either with your strong hand or your other strong hand to greatly increase your capability. And after seeing kind of the idea behind it and how this is actually used with respect to the application of the training, definitely eye-opening. As far as stats go on the Northman, the blade is made out of a M930 steel. It's 5/32 inches thick, and the blade actually measures 3.5 inches. Overall length of it is 6 7/8 inches, weighs 4.3 ounces, while the Fire Sheath, which we'll get to later, weighs 1.6 ounces. As far as the blade right here, yes, this one is serrated. You can also get a sterile blade, basically straight. And there have been a couple upgrades on a newer version, while this is the older version. On the newer blade, the puño, basically this piece that sticks out here, kind of catches your little finger. This is actually a little bit deeper. There's also some jimping along there. And then lastly, on the spine of the new one, it is squared off. Right here, it's been rounded a little bit. You can still use it with a ferro rod, but with a square spine, obviously works better. A really awesome aspect of the knife, honestly, is the sheath itself, the Fire Sheath. And Bill designed two different sheaths. So we have this one and this one. As you can tell, different style clips. So this is made to go deeper into your pocket, just giving you access to the puño sticking up so you can easily grab it, pull it out. This is made for belt carry. Pretty much allows you to put it anywhere on your belt line. And on the back side, we have essentially this fold over Velcro piece. So over here on this one, I'm gonna pull this thing out. I have a little fire starter put in there. Basically a big plastic straw with a Vaseline soaked cotton ball in there. And then I sealed it up. Didn't do a very pretty job, but it works. And I keep that in there for starting emergency fires. So you can obviously put anything in there, handcuff key, whatever. And then on both of the sheaths, along this side, we have a built-in ferro rod, which allows you to pretty much start a fire if you're capable of that skill. So if you're wondering why my blade is discolored, it's discolored because I've used to start quite a few fires. As I mentioned, the pocket sheath sits relatively deep, but gives you access to the puño, so you can go ahead, hook your pinky to facilitate drawing the knife out. The belt sheath works in the same manner. It can be attached, obviously, anywhere along the belt. Usually I will put it over on my other strong side, and it rides really well right there. Depending on how you have it set up, obviously this way with the puño facing to my right, it allows me access to get it out, whether with my other strong hand, or I can basically reach across my body and retrieve it with my strong hand. The exponential increase in capability with the Northman is kind of hard to appreciate without the training that kind of comes along with it. To that end, definitely grateful for the initial exposure with Surefire Battle of the Bills. And then later, I was fortunate enough to take one of AMTAC Shooting's force-on-force classes, combatives. And to that end, getting into shooting. So you have a certain amount of capability here, but we have a whole other strong hand. And so the ability to have access to a whole nother weapon, that's that's pretty incredible, especially, again, when you get the training that goes with it. Moving past the defensive aspect of this knife, there is a ton of utility built into it. Bill Rapier, he lives on a homestead. With that, he is constantly using his knife. And so a lot of people see the serrations and be like, you can't have that on a defensive knife. Well, yes, you can. And why can't you? Because pop culture says so. No. Mind you, this is not an 80s Rambo knife with super aggressive saw back here that will admittedly get caught on all kinds of things, probably at inopportune times. It's literally serrations. Serrations are amazing because they will take a gross amount of abuse before they finally stop cutting. So to the end of utility, you have a serrated section that can, cut cordage, like pretty much cut everything for a long time, even if you neglect sharpening that. And then on top of that, we have all the functionality built into the fire sheath. To the end of fire making, another thing the Northman does lend itself to is even just batoning wood, which depending on where you are, especially up north, North Idaho, in the winter, it can be really wet, and batoning wood can at times be the only way you're going to be able to get a fire going because of how wet everything is. To the end of fire starting, I have started a lot of fires with this knife. Basically, the way I use it is I will use the serrated blade. If you have one of the newer versions, you can of course use the spine. Have I degraded the blade using the serrations? Not in a noticeable way for me, but you'll basically make whatever little bird's nest you're gonna make, maybe some birch bark, some dried moss, whatever it is, and you essentially use that serration and throw sparks down into your bird's nest. Depending on how many fires you start, you will ultimately end up wearing through the ferro rod eventually. And regrettably, it is not replaceable. So I would recommend using it enough to know how to use it. And then after that, maybe carrying something like this. This just makes it way easier. It allows you to have a ready-made fire pretty much wherever you are. Again, inside of the straw, I have my, if I can get this thing out, I have my Vaseline soaked cotton ball. So I can just throw this guy down here, fluff this thing out. If I'm super big on leave no trace, I can take it out of there so that doesn't burn. But yeah, once get this guy down there so that it'll catch a spark for me, then turn around with the ferro rod and the knife. Boom, thing's going. At that point, I can start building my fire like I would regularly. I will say this makes it way, way easier than trying to just throw sparks on something. And depending on where you are, it can be incredibly handy because the other thing it definitely allows is a lot more flexibility with respect to the wood that you have available to you at the time. Because if you end up with a lot of really wet stuff, then it's kind of a bummer because that's what you got. So having something like this where it's soaked in Vaseline definitely buys you time and ultimately makes the process way easier. Taking a step back from the utility, jumping over to the Marshall side again, you obviously need the ability to train. So every Northman comes with a Northman training blade. It is exactly the same dimensionally as the Northman, minus, of course, the blade is aluminum and it is rounded. And the point is about a 1/2 inch shorter than the actual live blade. What this means is that in training, when you make contact, you would have already penetrated a 1/2 inch. It also comes with a storage sheath, meaning that when you go to train with the training blade, you can take your live blade out, put it in your storage sheath so you don't have a sharp knife just hanging out. And then you go ahead and take your Northman trainer and put it into your sheath, at which point you can now go ahead and do all the training you want without stabbing anyone or accidentally having someone get stabbed or cut with your live blade wherever you happen to set it, over on the table, off to the side, something along those lines. All of this said, how much does Northman cost? Costs $450. Comes obviously with the live blade, one of the fire sheaths, whether it is the belt sheath or the pocket sheath. Also comes with storage sheath and the training blade. Someone out there is like, I could just buy another Glock for that. Yes, you can. That way you can dual wield and use that second Glock to cut things open and maybe start a fire with. Good plan. But to the point of you could buy a second Glock. Let's look at that for a minute. Yes, you could, but this is literally something that vastly, I will take that, caveat that with, this is something with training that will vastly increase your ability, or capability rather, and gives you literally a weapon for your other strong hand, and you can train with it without ever having to buy another box of ammo for that second Glock that you just bought. Let that sink in. Like, there's a lot of value there. If this isn't for you, go buy a Mora, man. They're great knives, probably less than 15 bucks on Amazon. Awesome, do it. They will probably do it. Perfect job for you for your use case. This is arguably made for someone that actually takes self-defense, whether it's theirs as well as their families, very serious, and is willing to put in the time and train with it. If you want to pick one up, you can do so over at AMTAC Blades. I personally think they are amazing, incredible, well thought out knives that lend themselves to that entire spectrum, from the point of utility over to defensive application. And of course, if you want training to go with it, AMTAC Shooting, you can find all the different classes where he provides training, to include all the combatives where you'll actually get reps in with your training blade. As far as if you're looking at the different sheaths, which one should you get? Personally, I find different applications for both of them. The way I usually will use the pocket sheath is if maybe I'm backpacking, something like that, and I actually have a waist belt, I find it to be conducive because now I still have access to that knife. Or with this, I usually like to carry this over on my other strong side. So I basically don't have all my weapons on one side and I can access it with either hand. Personally, I like that. Also able to take this and easily put it onto a battle belt if I'm out doing training. So should I end up going dry with all my weapon systems, this one's still there, it'll never go dry. But if you end up picking one up and get some time with it, let me know how it does for you. And as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.
God, you must be kidding me. Thought this was supposed to be the home of the brave and the free.